I saw how hackers, the attackers, start moving from the big targets, big banks, to small businesses. Why? Because they're not protected. We actually have some stats that show that 50% of the attacks are actually geared towards small businesses. There's a lot of small businesses can do when it comes to protecting them. And I can tell you one that you've probably seen. It's called multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication. You're getting those, whether you're using Gmail or Outlook or any kind of email service, they have to have that option. I know sometimes it feels like, oh my God, it's a pain in the neck. If it's a pain in the neck for you, it's a pain in the neck for the hackers. You got to make their life difficult.
And when we talk about sensitive data that may be at risk, can you give some examples?
I always tell small businesses, are you running payroll? Yes, I do. That means you have social security numbers. You got to protect it, right? Number one, your fiduciary duty is to protect your own employees. The last thing you want to do before a big meeting or when you land a client or that big client that you were working so hard to land, somebody tells you, hey, we got hacked. Forget about everything else. That becomes your life. And I've seen it happen.
Hi, everyone. Lena Clark here, still at New York Tech Week. And I'm so excited that I found another amazing founder to speak with today. So why don't you introduce yourself to my audience?
This is Alex Paunic. I'm actually co-founder of PreCog Security with David O'Berry. Shout out to David. PreCog Security is a cybersecurity company where we focus on helping startups and the small and medium-sized businesses. We are out of Miami, Florida, but we have a national and global reach.
That's wonderful. A lot of people know that I have done some research in cybersecurity, and I think that it's one of the most important things for smaller businesses to think about, because the issue with cybersecurity is when you need it, it's already too late.
Right.
So can you kind of speak to the opportunities that you see for smaller businesses to improve what they're doing without spinning an arm and a leg that they may not have just yet?
How much time we have?
As much time as you need.
But that's one of the things. We're trying to make it simple. We know that when you say cybersecurity, it can be daunting, but it doesn't have to be. Let's take a little step back, Lena. I've been in cybersecurity for 20 years, plus years. I work for big companies like McAfee, Intel, work for startups. I saw how hackers, the attackers, start moving from the big targets, big banks, to small businesses. Why? Because they're not protected. They do have very interesting data, confidential data, and they're understaffed. Right? So they're overwhelmed. And those actually became big targets. We actually have some stats that show that 50% of the attacks are actually geared towards small businesses.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, that's bad part of the story. Well, we got a good part of the story too. There's a lot of small businesses can do when it comes to protecting them. We call it, fancy term, raising the security posture, making sure they have those controls. They're going to make it harder for the bad guys and bad girls, bad actors to attack them. It takes discipline, right? Like you said, I love how you said it doesn't have to cost arm and leg to protect yourself. There's a lot of information out there. We do encourage people to carve up some time on weekly or even sometimes daily basis and start implementing those procedures. Password management. Do not click on a potentially malicious link.
Do not click on weird links.
Yes.
Please do not.
And I can tell you one that you've probably seen. It's called multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication. You're getting those, whether you're using Gmail or Outlook or any kind of email service or any kind of software, SaaS software, they have to have that option. I know sometimes it feels like, oh my God, it's a pain in the neck. If it's a pain in the neck for you, it's a pain in the neck for the hackers, right? You got to make their life difficult. Those things don't have to cost a lot, right? It does cost discipline, right? It takes a little time to log into the account, but it takes you a little time. You got to understand the hackers move to the next target. That's easy. Now, we do understand that some of the startups are also building magnificent products and they're trying to sell it to big businesses. You have to have security affairs in order, controls in order. You have to document it. They're going to ask you, your big clients or, even smaller clients are going to ask a lot of security questions. That's where we come in. We built a program called Cybersecurity for Startups or Cybersecurity for Small Businesses, where we handhold you to make sure you're protected. We make sure that your compliance, paperwork, documentation is in order. And we make sure that when you go out there in this beautiful world, you look like a legit enterprisey company when it comes to security controls. So there you have it.
And when we talk about sensitive data that may be at risk, can you give some examples? I think that for a lot of small business owners, it's hard to know when am I kind of crossing over into my own data might be something that I need to worry about, or maybe my customers' data needs to be protected.
That's a great question. And we get it all the time. And the easy ones are, let's say, health tech, right? We have probably some viewers that build in telehealth. Don't wonder, you have to protect all the data, right? That's an easy one to understand. It gets a little tricky. Some say, well, I'm not collecting patients' data. I'm not collecting that much important information about my clients, but any kind of data can be misused by the bad actors. So the rule of thumb is you got to protect it. I always tell small businesses, are you running payroll? Yes, I do. That means you have social security numbers. You got to protect it, right? Number one, your fiduciary duty is to protect your own employees, and then they carry that same practice protecting your clients and your partners. So the best rule of thumb is, if you have any kind of data, if you're any kind of business, you have to protect it. You're going to be surprised how creative the adversaries and the cyber criminals get with a little bit amount of data. They can cause a lot of damage.
They have all day to figure out a way to get to whatever it is that they want. So I have a background in process safety, and we like to look at kind of the Swiss cheese model. Usually when a bad incident happens, it's not that people did absolutely nothing to prevent it. It's that there were just a series of little holes in whatever their process was, and those holes finally aligned. And that's when we have those catastrophic events.
Yes.
And I don't know about everyone else, but if someone wiped out my bank account, I would consider, well, maybe not this week because I'm already in New York. So New York already wiped out my bank account.
Right.
But I consented to that. If somebody else wiped out my account, I would consider that quite catastrophic.
Yes, and that can happen to businesses. And, you know, I keep telling startups, you spend so much time to get an MVP out, right? You pour blood, sweat, and tears to get that product out there. The last thing you want to do before a big meeting, or when you land a client, or that big client that you were working so hard to land, somebody tells you from your team, hey, we got hacked. Forget about everything else. That becomes your life. And I've seen it happen. And it's so unfortunate. Your life changes dramatically. This is not an event that you can just take care of. You know, there's no magic button that you can click. Can you just
Not like an
no, you know, all of a sudden you're this whole world of litigations, forensics, incident response. We obviously help with that, but I like to equate that, you know, maybe a little bit dramatic, like to a heart attack, right? We're going to tell you, just like doctors will, like, hey, there's a lot of things you can do to prevent a heart attack. It's much easier to do preventative things.
Yes.
Now, if it happens, it's not the end of the world. We have a lot of people out there that can do it, but it makes our jobs easier. Now, if you did have an attack, we can still help you, but this is where you got to take your health, your cyber health really seriously and start doing all those things. Password management, not clicking on the links, training your employees, enforcing the MFA and other things. You got to do regular testing. So when you look at our organization, that's what we do. We do regular assessment, regular testings. That's the name of our company, PreCog Security. We test the systems. We help our clients find those problems, find those gaps, and we help them, most importantly, fix them before the hackers come in. So test, find, fix. That's what we do.
And I always recommend getting somebody from outside of your company to come and try to access your systems. They will know a lot of different tips and tricks. But honestly, from my days in cybersecurity, a lot of times the same issues are occurring small places, big places alike. And so there's a lot of power in getting to learn from the mistakes of others in a nice controlled environment. A lot lower stress.
You should come work for us. That's exactly what we tell people. Now, you said a very important thing. That's called a third-party risk assessment. That's actually an industry term. You have to hire a third party, whether it's us or somebody else. Please listen to Lena. You got to bring somebody who's as objective, as neutral, that's going to point out where your risks are. The regulators and your clients are going to say, show us a report where a party that's not inside the organization has a report and showing the risk. And most importantly, how did you fix that risk? How did you remediate it? So you have to, it's regulatory law. It has to be a third party that's unbiased, neutral, and all that.
And if you've been watching this podcast, you've heard me talk about the types of sensitive data that as researchers, sometimes we're privy to. When I'm picking vendors, I actually will ask them, how are you protecting data? Are you having these third-party assessments? Are you SOC 2 compliant? Which a few years ago was a little bit harder to find. Now it's becoming a lot more common, so I don't have to sit there and explain the regulations. My team, we all have very process safety backgrounds. We'll pull out the manual and we will read whatever the law is. We'll check what's happening in Europe, all of those sorts of things. We get a more well-rounded understanding of what it is that we should be doing,
Yes.
when and how. So this is what we do for fun, actually.
That's fantastic. That's a very elevated security procedure that you have. It's actually called third-party vendor risk assessment. As the vendors are coming into the system, so are the hackers with them a lot of times. That's why the companies like yours, this is actually something that we are helping companies. You're instilling like, look, we want to work with you, but we do have some security questions. We got to make sure that you're protecting the data because we're going to ingest you in our system. So that practice is called third-party vendor risk assessment. This is where we get a lot of clients that come to us running because they got a questionnaire. We just had a client that had 750 security questions from their client, and they had 72 hours to answer all those. And you obviously have to be transparent and objective. Yeah, it's a lot of work.
One final question. So we spoke a bit about how a small business doesn't have to, spend a super large amount of money. For that small business, what type of investment do you think is a fair one for them to consider starting out?
Great question. So we can slice and dice this a few ways. I think the easiest one is when you look at what is a traditional budget percentage of the IT that goes to security, right? It ranges anywhere from 5 to 10, 15% for more enterprise companies. But if you can carve up, let's go with a round number, 10% of your IT budget, if you can carve it up towards security, that could do wonders. But again, it doesn't have to cost arm and leg. If you enforce the MFA, do the password manager, do the regular training, there's a lot of great information out there. You can ask ChatGPT, what are the security measures that I can take? It's more about discipline. But yeah, if you're looking for the number, look at your overall IT spend. It's about the 10% of your overall budget.
I really like that answer. I think as someone that started my business when it was just me and then grown and trying to decide how to prioritize things on a budget sheet, especially so we can afford to come to things like New York Tech Week, it's really helpful to put it within, I guess, the umbrella of the other things to consider. So Thank you so much for that.
You're so welcome. And again, I can promise you we're going to be on the path to make security simple. We're trying to make it a little bit more fun. We know there's a lot of Gen Zers, when they look at those PDFs of 80 pages, they're not going to read it, right? We're trying to make it a little bit more cybersecurity, more to come. We want to tell the digital story better. Shout out to our in-house digital storyteller, Mark. Basically, more to come from us. Please follow us at PreCog Security, Alex Paunic, Paunic on LinkedIn. Let us know how we can help you.
Yeah, and my friendly reminder to everyone, I am always saying this. If it's worth doing right, it's worth doing wrong. So if you heard all of those steps and there's just one step that you can take from there right now to make your data a little bit more secure, go on and take it.
Yeah.
Start somewhere. Anything is better than nothing, especially when we're talking about sensitive information, your financial information, your future nest egg, all of those things. It's worth the time, I promise. The information is getting a lot more accessible than when I used to pull out much bigger manuals. So y'all are lucky.
Yeah.
So awesome. I will have his contact information in the show notes of this episode. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Lena. It was awesome. Thank you for Sunflower US. And thank you for the audience. And stay secure. Security first, as we say.